we came across this very important theme where people are saying that let's start. Okay, in fact, a lot of our friends are actually coming back to us and telling us that let's start. And somewhere, this thinking that we have to quit before we start is one of the key reasons why people are not able to get started. Okay. So Bhavesh and I were thinking together and we thought that why not have a discussion on this with fellow people and see what we can, derive out of it. So this is a purely academic, sorry, this is not a purely academic discussion. We want to create more actionable out of this. And which is why we put together a few things which we thought was more appropriate, which helped us to get started while we were at job and we made the switch. So we're trying to put all of that learning into a very short presentation and we will take it forward from there. So, all right. So without really further delaying things, let me quickly introduce Bhavesh. So Bhavesh is a veteran. He has 25 plus years of experience. He's an ex-Deloitte Global Data Flex Grand View Research of a professional from working in these kinds of companies, a former Wall Street pharma biotech analyst. He's a go-to-market portfolio strategist, advisor to startups, founders, leaders, and helps innovation-led startups build commercial traction. That's one of the biggest forte that I have observed with Bhavesh. Yeah, and it takes him places. He goes places and speaks about his experience. So Bhavesh, maybe you can do the honors for me.
Absolutely, Satyajit. Thank you. That's very kind of you, Satyajit. Looking at your introduction, I think, between the two of us, we have probably made enough, career transitions and mistakes to have something useful, to share with the group today. Satyajit, brings more than 2 decades of experience across leadership, consulting, transformation roles, and has worked with companies like Deloitte, KPMG, Accenture, Novartis, and Geo. What makes Satyajit's journey particularly interesting is that he has successfully combined corporate leadership with entrepreneurship, coaching, and thought leadership. Right. So he's a 3-time best-selling author, a TEDx speaker, a leadership coach, and a visiting faculty member at IIMs and XLRIs. Over the years, he has worked with leaders, professionals, and organizations to help them communicate more effectively while leading with confidence and unlocking their potential. One of the reasons I enjoy working with Satyajit is that he has a very, very practical approach. Right? He does not just talk about change and growth. He helps people take action. So that's exactly what today's session is going to be covering. So we'll try to move from thinking about entrepreneurship to actually taking the first step. So I'm looking forward to learning from his experience and insights as well. Over to you, Satyajit.
Thank you. Thank you. I think you were also too kind. I think it looks like a mutual admiration society here, but that's pretty much fine with a webinar of this nature. All right. So on a Saturday morning, even if it's a slightly thin crowd, but we have all turned up here. And why have we turned up here? Because we believe that we have an idea which should see the day of light. But then having said that, there are many reasons why we have not moved forward with it, right? So let's start figuring out one by one, step by step, where we want to go and how we can reach there. Right? To start with, let me ask you a very simple question. You are here because you want to start, right? What is the reason why you want to start? So let me give you some options. Is it autonomy or agency that you seek? Fed up with the boss culture, boss directing, you want to do something of your own because you want to experience autonomy? Or is it creative expression that you have some idea which you want to build from scratch and execute it, not just follow orders and execute somebody else's playbook? Are you looking for impact legacy, which means there is a problem and it could be a commercial problem, it could be a society problem that you want to solve, but you have a definite idea that this problem needs to be solved. Is it impact legacy which you are looking forward to? Or is it financial symmetry? And trust me, I have met people in this category also who feel that their income is being capped by a job. They can earn way more than what they are earning today by being independent. So which one of the four reasons is the reason why you want to start? You can also opt for a fifth reason, but here is the buffet that I have. So yeah, you can unmute yourself, tell, ping in the chat, whichever way works for you.
So I think Satyajit and Bhabesh, in my opinion, most of the time currently in India, people want to ride the wave of startup. They feel left behind. They said everybody of my colleagues, everybody is doing the startup. I am the only one who is left out. So most of the time, that is the feeling. They don't think. They just want to jump, and they see that everything is green on the other side, which is not the case. I have seen many examples. Professionals who have highly experienced people at the very top of their career, suddenly they switch over and then they realize that what they got into. So, I mean, and I always warn them that, having, doing a job is a different thing and having your own organization is absolutely different ball game. You need to take care of a lot of things which you would have not even thought during your job time. So, I mean, this is my take on it.
Absolutely. I think what you are slightly alluding to is the fear of missing out, that it's a trend. And by not being part of the journey, I'm missing out. In fact, a very interesting story I have. So when I was in Delhi, sorry, when I was in Bombay back in 2020, 2019 timeframe, I happened to go to a friend's birthday party, and there uh, friend's son's birthday party, and there I met his younger brother, my friend's younger brother. He was doing his BTech from IIT, okay, and he was in, I think, second year. He was very stressed, and when he met me, he was telling me that there is a lot to be done now. I have to do my own startup. I have already in second year. I have not done anything yet. My friends are doing startup, and that was my first time I felt what FOMO could look like when it comes to not being able to start something of your own. I think this FOMO is very real. But what I'm trying to also understand here with this question is, even if I have FOMO, right? What is this FOMO? The reason behind this FOMO? Is it, for example, you are going and visiting Europe. So I have a FOMO that I'm not going to visit Europe. So the FOMO, the missing out piece is basically the relaxation or entertainment or enjoying new places. In cases like where we are talking about startup, what is the FOMO? Is it the autonomy? Is it the creative expression? Is it the impact legacy? Or is it the financial symmetry? What do you think? So let's say if I ask you, right, you want to probably start. Why do you want to start? What's the primary reason?
And I think everybody would have a different this thing. What
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
in India, most of the time, because the hype has been created so much, right from by Jews, things have started that, or maybe a Nike and everything, people are becoming billionaires and millionaires just by doing the startup within 3-4 years. That is the main reason everybody is running after the startup without even thinking that, okay, yes, we'll get the grant. Problem is that, the VCs and angel investors are also there, they just pour in the money. They don't
Yes.
care. Even after 10 or 50, just one might go up to the unicorn and there some things are done. Rest of everything they write off. So these things do happen. And that is why I think everybody is, try to ride the wave.
Right, right. So no matter what, right? So there is a reason why all of us wants to start, and probably that reason varies from people to people, right? I have seen people, I didn't expect that there will be people who would say that, my income gets capped because of a job, right? I can earn more. But I have seen, people in that bucket also who feel that their income is getting, limited because they are in a job. So we all come in different size and shapes. Some drive something else. So for me personally, it was about autonomy and agency. I really wanted to do something of my own where I have a lot of control, which is why I call myself more an entrepreneur rather than a startup owner. Yeah, so there is a difference. I think Bhavesh will elaborate on that when we get there. But we will see how the mindset changes. Now that this why do you want to start is out of the way, let's go to the next important question, right? So when you are in a job and you want to start, but you can't start, right? So what is the biggest anchor holding your boat to the corporate pier? Again, let me give you some options. The first one is called the cash flow cliff. It's basically the sheer terror, that you experience when you move into an entrepreneurship journey, because you're not going to start earning from day one. There will be a gap in the build phase, and then you will start subsequently earning, and that earning may be a percentage of what you might be earning at your corporate level, especially if you're like 15 years, 20 years, that kind of a experience band. The second one, which is again very, very important, is called the identity tax. This means that you have spent, so for example, in my case, right, it was 20 years of experience in corporate strategy, whatever it is, right? And then what I am doing right now, I am starting from scratch, right? So this journey can become sometimes a journey of identity too, shunning away everything. And I have experienced it very firsthand, right? So when I used to go to the colleges as a senior leader from Accenture, I used to be rolled out the red carpet because they thought that I will give them placements. But now when I go after this 20 years, when I started stuff of my own, I didn't had an institutional backing. And the moment I went there, the red carpet is a very, very distant dream now. It is, even getting into the doors becomes a challenge. So that identity tax is a very heavy tax that many willing professionals, many willful professionals are unable to make that cut. Yeah. And it is perfectly normal. The last one is again very important. It's something that I can also relate to when I was basically trying to move over, right? So what happens is corporates take a disproportionate amount of time, okay, of your work life. And after your 11, 12 hours plus the commute, when you come back home, you're hardly left with any energy to work on your own stuff. As a result of which, what happens is your cognitive bandwidth is not available for your own personal endeavor, which is what you want to plan for long term. So this is again something which is more related to how you're going to manage your energy. So if people are failing in this area, it is another reason why they are keeping glued to the corporate job. And many of us, frankly, are in this bucket because what happens is prioritizing corporate work, our own priority becomes, very, very secondary. And as a result of which we are not able to prioritize, right? So if I again put this question back to you, right, what is this single biggest anchor holding your boat and you're not able to set sail, right? What is it out of the three? Which one is the one that you fear the most?
I think for most of the people, it will be number one only. It's a fact, and especially, during current situations, whether it is geopolitical, whether it is what is happening in India. Imagine, if tomorrow you open up our, news channel or anything, you see that petrol has hiked 2 rupees or 3 rupees. That creates a lot of, kind of discomfort, creates a lot of, this disbelief that what would we do next? That is a anxiety of almost everyone, every single Indian, I would say, unless they are in the bracket of, top 1% of India, or maybe if they are a politician, so then they don't have to worry. But otherwise, everybody face this thing here.
Right, right. By the way, those of you who are not, yes, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I actually could see a few messages on the chat box from Kritika and Thomas. We can take their comments also.
Yeah, so what is happening is because I'm sharing the screen, right? So the messages are not coming to me. So I was about to say that when you interrupted me and told the very same thing.
Right.
So is it okay if you read it out?
Yes, yes. For Kritika, she says, also not dependent on just job or income generation, maybe like creating another stream of income.
Okay.
And Thomas says, I want to use my extensive experience after my retirement for some good cause.
Fantastic. So it is so for Kritika, it is a additional financial stream, and that is why she wants to start. And very, very rightly so. The term side hustle applies there. And then for Thomas, it is making the most of his long experience, and how can he leverage it his post his retirement, right? So in fact, this is very interesting. Lot of my executive coaching clients are basically toying with this idea. They're 55, 56 years, and they're basically thinking that after 60, how do I set up my consulting business and build that leadership presence, so that I get to leverage the experience. Very pertinent comments, right? So yes, I think more or less we have understood the why and the what behind the issue. Uh, Both Bhavesh and I had extensive discussions with many people before this uh, webinar. And what Bhavesh is going to do now is going to present to you, what real discussions and what real buckets we have observed by speaking to these people. So you ready, Bhavesh? Shall I hand it over to you?
Yes, yes. You can
Fantastic.
scroll over to the next slide. Yes, perfect. Thank you, Satyajit. Falgun, you were saying something. I think I interrupted you midway. But yeah, I think you were trying
No,
to.
nothing. I think my part was done. Yeah, nothing.
All right, cool. Thanks. So let me start with a very simple observation, right? Over the years, right, after the last 30 years of my career, I have met hundreds of professionals, right? Consultants and managers, business leaders, senior executive leaderships. Many of them have told me, the same thing. Someday I want to, do something of my own. Right? Even I was also saying this. Now that I'm an entrepreneur, I've been saying this for years together. Finally, I could, venture in. So they say maybe consulting, maybe building a niche business, maybe turning my expertise into a source of income. So I can tell you, right, from what they said, from my experience, I could sense the desire is there, right? The capability is also there. The experience is certainly there because they're all experienced people, right? Yet what happens is years go by and nothing really happens. And I have often wondered why, right? So because if you think about it, many professionals already have what aspiring entrepreneurs are trying to acquire, right? Because they already have the industry knowledge, they have the domain expertise, they have professional credibility, they have a strong network, and then years of experience, right, solving real problems. So why don't more people start, right? In my experience, it usually comes down to a few mental traps. And the interesting thing is that these traps have very, very little to do with intelligence or capability. They're mostly about mindsets and perceptions, right? I have experienced some of them myself. So when I started my career back in 1995, I certainly didn't know, where my journey would take me. I moved to the US to do my, master's education. And then I became a Wall Street pharma and biotech analyst. I returned back after staying in the US for 6 years and ended up working with, organizations like Deloitte, Data Monitor, and, Global Data and Plex and others. So today, I work with companies, startups, and founders on strategy and growth. So when I look back, right, none of these transitions happened because I had a master plan. Most happened because I was willing to take the next step, even when I didn't have all the answers, right? So that's why I believe that for most professionals, the challenge is not capability. The challenge is getting started. So I want to go through some of these regions, right? Or the mental traps as to what prevents most people to start. Let me talk about the trap number one, right? Which is waiting for the perfect idea. I think this is probably the most common trap. People believe, they need a groundbreaking idea or a breakthrough idea before they can start. Right? Many of us think it that way. They keep looking for, that one magical opportunity, something unique, something disruptive, something big, something nobody has ever thought about before. So the problem is that while they are searching for the perfect idea, they are not taking any action. And action is where learning happens, right? So if you look at many successful businesses, they didn't start as perfect ideas, right? All of them evolved over time. The founders learned from customers, and then they adapted, they refined, they pivoted, right? They changed directions. So the original idea was often very different from what eventually unfolded or succeeded, right? So one thing I have learned is that the market is a much better teacher than our own imagination. You can sit in a room and think about an idea for 6 months, right? Or you can speak to 10 potential customers in 2 weeks and learn from them more than you would from your own 6 months of planning, right? So perfection is often the enemy of progress. You don't need the perfect idea, right? No one starts perfect. So you need a problem which is worth exploring. So that said, let me talk about the trap number 2, which is fear of losing income and security. Satyajit talked about that and gave a very great context already. I'll try to help expand that with a bit more examples and anecdotes. So let's be honest, right? This is probably the biggest concern for most working professionals, right? And it's a valid concern because we have responsibility, right? We have families. We have to pay our EMIs. We have to take care of our children's education and a lifestyle we have worked hard to build, right? So the idea of giving up a stable income can feel very risky, and it's a genuine concern, right? Sometimes even irresponsible, right? But here is the interesting part. Many people, right, they assume entrepreneurship requires an immediate leap. They think it's either a job or a business, right? Corporate or entrepreneur, employee or founder. But reality is much more nuanced, right? Today, there are many ways to start while keeping your job, right? So the objective is not to replace your salary tomorrow. The objective is to start learning. The objective is to validate demand, to understand what works. The objective is to build confidence, right? So your job can actually be your biggest advantage because it provides stability. Because startup is an experiment, right? And you need to pay your bills while you are experimenting, right? So that's why we call this webinar, the very title of it, right? Start without quitting. So now let me talk about our trap number 3, right? Which is overestimating the risk. This one fascinates me. Human beings are naturally, wired to focus on downside risk, right? We ask, what if I fail? What if nobody buys? What if, I end up wasting my time? What if people judge me? These are all fair questions, right? But we rarely ask the opposite question, which is, what if it works? Or even more importantly, what is the cost of never trying, right? What if you are sitting with some, that you end up sitting with the same idea 3 years from now? What's the risk of that? Or 5 years from now, for that matter, right? How would that feel? So many professionals, right? They spend years worrying about risks that may never happen. Meanwhile, the opportunity to learn, grow, and create something meaningful quietly passes by, right? Sometimes the greatest risk is not failure. It's staying exactly where you are. Right? So that said, let me come to the trap number 4, which is analysis paralysis. So this one I understand very well because I come from a research and consulting background. In the research and consulting space, we love information, we love frameworks, right? We love analysis, and we love getting things right. But entrepreneurship does not reward perfect analysis, right? It rewards action and learning. Now, I have met people, right, who have read every entrepreneurship book, right? They have watched, tons of, YouTube videos on startups and entrepreneurship and innovation. They've taken every course out there. They've attended lots of webinars. They've consumed endless content, right? But they have never spoken to a potential customer. They've never tested any idea. They've never asked someone to pay. So at some point, learning stops adding value, right? Action becomes more valuable than information. So one customer conversation can teach you more than 10 books. One small experiment can teach you more than months of planning. So the goal isn't to know everything before you start. So the goal is to learn as you go. Now, let me come to the last mental trap, which is, thinking entrepreneurship means building a startup, right? So this is probably the biggest misconception. So when people hear entrepreneurship, right, so they immediately imagine startups, right? Fundraising, investors, pitch decks, valuation, teams, scaling. Understandably, they sound and look overwhelming, isn't it? Most entrepreneurship is much bigger than startups. In fact, most successful businesses, they don't start that way, right? Because they all start small. One customer, one project, one engagement, one problem solved well, right? In my own experience, when I started off with my consulting practice, it took 9 months to win my first contract, right? And now, the pipeline seems to, is building up. It's going to get a lot better than what it used to be. It all starts with that small step, right? That small baby step. So a consultant serving one client is creating value, or a coach helping one individual is creating value, right? An advisor guiding one startup, that's also creating value. So that's entrepreneurship too. So the goal isn't to become the next unicorn, right? We are all obsessed with this notion, right? That I want to build the next unicorn, a $1 billion valuation company out there, right? And that probably is the biggest barrier for us to get going. So the goal is to create value independently and consistently, right? And for many professionals, right, that's actually a much better starting point. So when I look at this slide, right, I don't see 5 traps. I see 5 reasons why talented professionals, they stay on the sidelines. Not because they lack intelligence or expertise or potential, but because something keeps telling them, right, wait, maybe a little longer. Let me do more research. Let me find a better idea, or start when the timing is perfect, right? The truth is that the timing is rarely perfect, right? So most successful journeys begin before we feel fully ready. So, and that's the key message I would like to leave you with. You don't need more confidence before you start. You build confidence by starting. And the good news is that every one of these traps can be overcome.
Right. I think, Bhavesh, very nicely, very diligently you have put across these 5 traps. Yeah. One of the things while you were speaking about it, I basically was, calibrating in my mind. none of these traps typically apply to youngsters, right? The arrogance of youth, which is basically the premium of time that they have, makes it worthwhile to overcome these traps in a systemic basis. But then when we look at working professionals, we have a premium on time. We are already ahead in the life cycle, which is why these traps are normal. These traps are real, and it is perfectly fine to feel the debt of these traps. But very nicely you have put that all of these traps can be broken, and you can liberate out of each of these traps. And one of the reasons why we are having this webinar is also to develop that perspective, to develop that transition architecture, which will enable this kind of a thought process to work with. And to do that, right, what we need is a very different kind of reframing. Yeah. And that is where I want to talk about this transition architecture, which is more about reframing, more about perspective, more about how do you go about operationalizing, breaking away from the traps. Okay. We will keep talking about more and more about this. Now, what I have here is 4 boxes where I'm talking about 4 different tenets of this architecture. The first one is, of course, the capital runway. So which is for a working professional, it is very important to know what financial position we are currently in, right? Do we have a runway of a year? We have a runway of 6 months. We have a runway of 2 years. It depends from person to person. It depends on how well he has planned his financial journey, right? For many of us, we don't even know what financial planning is. Many working professionals I have met, all that they understand is probably putting some money in SIPs or stock markets or FDs, right? But financial planning is a full-fledged action by itself. So what I generally urge to people is to look at where they are with respect to their finances, right? And this helps them get the perspective in terms of what's working for them, what's not working for them. And when eventually the cutover will happen, how well are they prepared from a financial perspective? The second one, which I also want to talk about, is the stakeholder compact. What is this? So when you make a decision that, yes, I want to start something in parallel to what I'm currently doing as a day job, it is going to take, additional amount of time. It is going to occupy some amount of your time, which was otherwise going into some other bucket. Because if you observe, right, the 24 hours in a day is not going to expand. It's not going to become 25 or 26 hours, right? That 24-hour window is going to remain the same. So along with your day job, now you have to again manage something which is like your passion project or a side hustle for whatever reason you want to start with. And this is going to again take some of your time and take you away from your family for a bit of time, which is why communicating with your stakeholders becomes very, very important. When I was in my journey, when I was having a day job and I was also trying to build something on my own, I really had a very candid discussion with my better half and basically told her that this is how the journey is going to be. I will need those extra times, because if you don't create those discussions, at the end of the day, it is going to impact your work-life balance. And then one fine day, this initiative that you thought would one day become the reality would actually take a back seat, and then suddenly will vanish out of your own vehicle. So that's something which I felt is very, very important. The third one is called the cognitive resilience. Okay, it is very important because one of the things which human beings do is they always prioritize short-term benefits over long-term resilience. It is easy. It's called the psychology of discounting. We are easy to see what comes immediate. And that's a thinking which many working professionals also translate to their side hustles. They want to take up something which starts giving you the revenue on an immediate basis, right? And you also think that if I'm putting X amount of effort, I should get Y amount of output. But that may or may not happen immediately, right? How Bhabesh mentioned, right? For his first client in his consulting service, it took him 9 months. You need to have that cognitive resilience that you have to, keep coming back, showing up, work on it, brick by brick, build it, right? And one day it will happen. So that perspective, that reframing is very important from a cognitive resilience perspective. The last one is called the boundary discipline. It is one of the things that I have myself faced. So when I was back into 2017, when I was in Reliance, right, I wanted to, in parallel, start something for the students, something around, preparing, helping them, for campus placements, things like that. Now, the job itself, which I was doing, was very demanding. It would anyways take up 9-10 hours of my day on a typical basis. On top of it, you add commute. I was staying in Mumbai. So commute is another 1.5 hours. So it's like 3 hours both ways. So you're not looking at something less than 11-12 hours of which is gone like this. Now, after you come back, you are like dead tired. You hardly have any energy, right? And you start looking at your own pet project, right? It doesn't look like pet project anymore. To be honest, it starts draining you even more, which is why it is important to start setting up boundaries, discipline boundaries. And you have to also somewhere, tell yourself, because what happens is when it's your pet project, right? We tend to have this thought process that, okay, 𝗘𝘁𝗿, let me not do it today. I will pick it up tomorrow. And then tomorrow you will say the same thing. And then, a week passes. Then you start losing interest. Then a month passes. Then you think that, boss, it's not happening. I'm trying. Nothing is happening. And you get into the vicious circle because you start prioritizing your main work, which you should, without really setting boundaries for what you prioritize in the long term. So this boundary discipline is very, very important. This kind of reframing is required. I'm not saying that as a working professional, one will be able to do it right away. But awareness is the first step. Knowing these patterns is the first step. Understanding and codifying these patterns is the first step. Only when you know these patterns, right, and you start reimagining, you start, reframing them in the right way, that's when your transition architecture will start taking shape, and you will have that mindset and somewhat the balance to manage two things parallelly. Yeah. Now, that being said, right, let us explore, what could be some of the ideas that can work with a full-time job. So, Bhavesh, should you just walk us through your thought process here?
Absolutely, Satyajit. You have, the last slide, you have explained really well the transition architecture. It really resonated. We'll take questions at the end, what participants have. But first of all, let me explain, right, what ideas can potentially work, right, alongside holding a full-time job. I want to make it, practical. So one of the biggest misconceptions, right, people have is that entrepreneurship means building a startup. I think I told you this already. So the moment they hear the word entrepreneur, they think that I need a product, or I need a technology, or I need funding, I need employees, I need an office, or I need a business plan, and it feels so overwhelming, right? Because of which they never start. That's not how most people should begin, right? In fact, if you are already a working professionals with 10, 15, 20 years of experience, right? Your biggest asset is not an idea, right? It's your expertise. It's everything that you have learned, right, over the years. So the question is, how can you convert, right, your expertise into value while still keeping your full-time job, right? So that is what this slide is about, right? So before we go through these options, right, let me ask a quick question. How many of you have more than 10 years of work from this group. I think Phalgun I know has, I think, roughly 15 years of experience or potentially more. Anyone else outside of Phalgun? How many of you have more than 10 to 15 years of experience?
I think most of them have.
Krithika and Karthika and Thomas, I think I could see. Majority of them do, right? That's a great thing, right? So now keep your hand up. If people regularly come to you, right, for advice, guidance, recommendations, or problem solving, do people come to you? Anyone want to raise the hand?
There are few people who are saying yes. I think you are not able to see when you are speaking.
Yeah, I could see Thomas.
Kritika is saying, Karthika
is typing something. Yes.
Yeah. Thomas is saying, yes, I think, when we grow in our careers, right, people do reach out, right? Especially if you come across as somebody authentic, who is not unnecessarily giving useless yarn, right? So people do reach out. Let me share.
In the corporate world, absolutely. In the corporate world, they say like he's the go-to person, right? When it comes to market research, and why don't you go and talk to him, right? Because that's the kind of branding they build in an enterprise setting, right? So absolutely. Sorry to cut you off your thought process, Satyajit.
No, absolutely not. I was just because I thought you would not be able to see the chat. I was summarizing on their behalf.
Yes. Thank you. So you already have something valuable, right? The question is simply, how you package it, right? Now let's look at some examples. So I have given a few examples, but this is not an exhaustive list, right? There could be potentially more. So let me first talk about fractional consulting, right? Something that I'm already doing myself. It's very close to my heart, and this is probably one of the easiest way to start also. So you don't need a product, right, when it comes to fractional consulting, and you don't need investment also. You simply help companies solve a problem using your expertise, right? For example, much of my career has been in healthcare, pharmaceuticals, competitive intelligence, market research, and strategy. So if a small biotech company needs market insights or product launch strategy, competitive intelligence, or portfolio prioritization, I don't need to build a startup. I can simply provide consulting service, right? Many companies today don't need a full-time expert, right? They need access to expertise when required. This is the real thing, right? In the current job market, if you see, everything is becoming on demand, right? Because no one wants to bear the fixed cost, right? Contractual is the way to go. So fractional is similar to in that flavor, right? So they need access to expertise when required, right? I mean, you can call it as ad hoc, which is fine. That's another term. But it gives the freedom and flexibility, right, to both employers and employees. I mean, in this context, it can be your target company and you as an entrepreneur, right? It gives flexibility to both the parties, isn't it? So that's where opportunities exist, right? So let me ask another question. If someone called you tomorrow and asked for advice in your areas of expertise, what would they ask you about, right? That answer, right, may be your consulting opportunity. If you try to find, if you look at the answer they give you critically, the answer that you'll give them critically to the questions that someone is asking you, chances are that your answer may be, right, your next consulting opportunity. We don't think it that way, right? So the next bucket is strategic advisory, right? So this is slightly different from consulting, because the way I see it, right, how is consulting different from advisory, right? in my view, in my mind, consulting is about project-based, right? Whereas advisory is more ongoing. So many startups and growing businesses, right? They need experienced professionals. Someone like you guys, right? Holding more than 10 to 15 years of experience, right? They need experienced professionals who can guide them through decisions, right? So over the years, I have advised founders, startups, and businesses on market strategy, commercialization, competitive positioning, and growth. So the interesting thing is that founders don't always need more employees. Sometimes they need experienced thinking. And many professionals in this room, right, have years of experience that founders would find incredibly valuable. I'm using my expertise already, and I'm getting success, right? Working with a lot of these incubators, accelerators in the Bangalore life sciences ecosystem. They gave incredible value from my industry expertise, right? So the next thing is about specialized research and insights. So this is close to my heart again, because I have spent much of my career, right, in research and strategy. So many organizations struggle to make sense of information. So they need market analysis, competitor intelligence, industry research, or strategic insights. So one of the biggest opportunity today is helping organizations interpret information and make decisions. Information is all out there, right? How do you interpret those information to enable decision making, right? That's where the opportunity lies, especially in a world, right, where information is abundant, but insights is scarce. So the next thing is AI enhanced, consulting and research. With this emergence of AI, this is definitely, an area to introspect and dig deeper into. Now this is where things are changing rapidly, right? AI is not replacing expertise; it is amplifying expertise, right? There is a lot of debate going on this subject. So today, one experienced professional supported by AI can often deliver work much faster than before, right? So the opportunity is not to compete with AI, but to combine your expertise with AI. That's a powerful combination. And coming to executive coaching and training, where Satyajit holds profound and immense experience there, so he can share his expertise and experience in this space. On this area, right, executive coaching and training, let me ask another question. How many of you have trained, mentored, managed, or developed people in your career from this group? Have you mentored, trained, coached employees, your co-workers?
So Thomas says, I have done. Kritika says, I have done.
Yes, I could see that too. Anyone wants to say something? Feel free to speak up if at all. Falgun, I think you have something to talk about. I'm sure you must have coached.
I mean, I think the moment people have, reach out to certain level in their career, be it with one organization or multiple organizations, these things comes as a part of that. I'm sure everyone in this, whoever is there in this webinar, everyone has done this. I don't know doubts about it.
Right. That's right. Most professionals, right, they underestimate, right, how valuable their experience can be to others. Right? So, and organizations are constantly looking for trainers, mentors, facilitators, and coaches, especially in the startup world. Right? When in the startup world, you must be hearing about terms like investors, ecosystem, right? Startup ecosystem. And mentor is an integral part, right? Mentor, investors, founders, innovators, developers, right? So mentor and trainers are in big demand in the booming startup space. Right? So domain expertise can become your mode. Right? And domain expertise also can become a teaching business. right? If you have an appetite or aptitude for teaching, domain expertise can become a business. We don't look at it that way, but depends how you package it, right? So leadership experience can become a coaching business too, right? Which Satyajit is already successfully able to do it. And knowledge can become a training business. Years of industry experience. Like I know a lot about the cancer market because I've done tons of projects in the global cancer market. For me, it can be a training business too. And those out there in any other their areas of expertise, if they have amassed tremendous amount of knowledge, right, through their career, through the projects that they have delivered to the clients, it can become a training business, right? Now coming to digital knowledge products, right? This is becoming increasingly popular. So think about all the templates, frameworks, checklists, methodologies, playbooks, and tools, right, that you have developed over your career. Most of us create this for our employers, right? And we're not supposed to carry it along when we leave a particular job. But the native knowledge stays with you, right? So what if some of that knowledge could become a product? Can you productize? The templates, frameworks, and the research methodology or playbooks that you have developed for your employer over the years. Can you productize that? Of course, right? There is a way to do. I mean, we don't think about it again, but it can be, right? So knowledge can become an asset. And an asset can generate value repeatedly. Right? Now let's talk about industry newsletters and thought leadership. Now, one thing I have learned, right, is that opportunities often follow visibility. Right? People can't hire you if they don't know you exist. It's about visibility, right? Many professionals have deep expertise, but very little visibility. Right? For whatever reasons, maybe they're shy, they're introvert, they don't open up. They may be subject matter experts, but they're not visible, right? Now, a newsletter, a LinkedIn content, or a thought leadership article, thought leadership, paper. It can be an industry commentary, right? These are many ways how you can build trust at scale, right? I've been doing it, and it is giving me the results, right? I regularly post content on LinkedIn in my areas of expertise, and because of which the visibility is increasing. I'm trying to, because my job is to win projects, right? And I do my own sales outreach and business development. And because of my LinkedIn presence, discovery calls, introductory calls are happening fairly easily because of my visibility on LinkedIn lately, right? But when I started off, it was not the case. So many consulting and advisory, opportunities, they start because someone consistently shares valuable insights. So in fact, some of you may be attending this webinar because you saw content, right, from either Satyajit or me. So that's thought leadership in action. And then expert communities and peer networks. Right? This is one of the most underappreciated opportunities. People don't pay for information, right? They pay for access. They pay for learning. They pay for connections, right? So many successful businesses have been built around communities, right? So groups of people facing similar challenges and learnings together, right? Sometimes, the community becomes the business. So now when you look at this slide, right, I don't want you to see 8 business models, right? I want you to ask yourself one question. Which of these feel closest to you, to who I already am, right? Because the biggest mistake people make is trying to become someone else. I want to be like him. I want to be like, the other person out there, right? We tend to compare ourselves with, right? That's the biggest mistake that people can make. The easiest business is to start the one that is closest to your existing expertise or core competencies. So you don't need to reinvent yourself. You need to leverage yourself, right? So the challenge is not acquiring more knowledge, but the challenge is to recognize the value of what we already know, right? And that's where most entrepreneurial journeys begin. I hope I was clear enough. Satyajit, you were saying something?
No. I just switched the slide to the next slide.
All right. I hope I could make sense in my previous slide. I'll take questions on that probably towards the the end of the session.
Just one second. I messed up the sharing and reshare.
All right. Let me talk about the biggest mistake that we make when we start something of our own. Right? So this is actually very, very important, right, in the startup world. In fact, if you remember, right, one thing from my presentation today, remember this: the biggest mistake most people make when starting something new is that they build before they validate. I mean, I'm an anchor advisor to an incubator in Bangalore, and I advise, I mentor about half a dozen, startups in the biotech and medtech space. And I'll tell you from my experience working with them, right? They all started building before they validated, and they received grants, government grants too. And I can understand why, right? Because that's how most of us are conditioned to think, right? Because we get excited about an idea, we immediately start thinking about a website, we start thinking about preparing a logo, a product, a business name, right? A brochure or a LinkedIn page or a pitch deck, right? And before we know, we spend weeks or months, right, building something, and then we market launch. And then we wait and hope that customers will show up, hope that people will buy, right? Hope that somebody finds value in what I have created, right? The problem is that hope is not a strategy. Let me ask a quick question, right? How many of you have ever worked on a project that looked fantastic internally, but failed when it met the real market? Right? Most of us have, in my view, right? Because customers don't buy solutions, right? They buy solutions to problems they care about. And that's why validation is important, right? Now let's look at the left side first, right? That's where most people go wrong, right? But even then they still end up doing it, right? Build, spend, launch, and hope, right? The sequence sounds logical, but it's actually backwards. People start creating solutions before understanding the problem. They spend money before validating demand, and they invest time. Time is a resource too. Right? You are making your time investment, right? A lot of people end up spending months, even years, before confirming interest. So just because you are busy does not mean you are making progress, right? So I have seen founders spend 6 months building a product only to discover that nobody actually wants it. I have seen consultants create websites, service brochures, and offerings before speaking to a single prospective client. I have seen professionals spend months designing courses before asking whether anyone would ever pay for them. So the lesson is simple. Building feels productive. That makes us busy, right? But validation feels uncomfortable. Validation is challenging, right? It's difficult, right? That's why people avoid validating things. It's a tendency, right? Human tendency we tend to, sidestep or, difficult things that we think we can do later and start looking at easier things, right? So now let's look at the smarter approach, right? towards the right side of the slide. Right. So instead of starting with solutions, start with the problem. So find a problem or identify a problem that people genuinely struggle with. Then start the conversations with the stakeholders, the buyers, the channel partners, right? Lots of conversations, not one or two, as many as possible. Not sales conversation again, like learning conversations. Ask questions, listen carefully, understand what frustrates people, understand what they are trying to achieve, understand what they have already tried, and most importantly, understand whether the problem is important enough or acute enough for them to solve. Is there a pressing need, overarching need, right? Because not every problem is a business opportunity, right? People may complain about something. That does not mean they will pay to fix it, right? So let me give you a simple example from my own world. Suppose I believe healthcare companies need better competitive intelligence. So instead of immediately creating a platform, hiring, building an analyst team and spending money, I would start with conversations. I would speak with commercial leaders, maybe strategy teams or market intelligence professionals, BU heads. I would ask questions like, what challenges are you facing? How are you solving them today? What is working? What is not working? If you could change one thing, what would it be? And after enough conversations, you will see patterns emerging. Now I have something much more valuable than an idea. Now I have evidence. So the next step is validation. Validation simply means confirming that the problem is real. Not in my mind, not in PowerPoint, not in a brainstorming session, but in the real world, right? A lot of people stop at compliments, right? People say, oh, that looks interesting. Oh, that's a great idea. Oh, you should do that. Those comments feel good, but they are not validation. Founders take it as validation. Those are feel good comments, right? Right. Validation happens when people invest something. And that investment can be in form of money, time, attention, access, commitment. That's when you know you are solving a real problem. And then comes the most important step. Payment. Is someone paying you? This is where many people get uncomfortable. But the truth is simple. Revenue is one of the strongest form of validation. Right? If someone is willing to pay, you have moved beyond opinions. You have entered reality. The market has spoken. And only after that, you start building, not before, after, right? Because now you are building with confidence. Now you are building based on evidence, right? And you are building something people have already told they need, right? So let me ask everyone a question. If you were to start something tomorrow, what is the first thing you would do? Build a website, create a logo, register a company, or speak to 5 potential customers? Any takers?
Speak to 5 potential customers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And any other thoughts? Because the correct answer is always the conversation, right? The conversation comes before the solutions. It does not come after the solution. Right? When I look back at successful projects throughout my career, right, whether in consulting or market research or competitive intelligence, the best outcome always started with understanding the problem deeply. Right? The same principle applies to entrepreneurship. Don't fall in love with your solution. Fall in love with understanding the problem. The solution will evolve. Understand the problem first, as deeper as you potentially can, right? The problem is what matters. And that's why the smartest entrepreneurs, right? They don't start by building. They start by listening. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think this is the point where I would take the liberty of explaining the journey I have had. Okay, so while these points are very important, interest is not validation. Real validation looks different. Most early founders confused, right? So we have touched upon these, and we will elaborate that. But the point I'm trying to make here is a little different. So 2017, right? In the course of this discussion, I was mentioning about that year, when I was in Reliance and I was trying to build something for students. And I had this idea that tier 2, tier 3 students do not get enough of this guidance. Okay, something, that an hypothesis that lived in my mind. And I was very confident that this is the truth. And I started building. Okay. And then I also started spending. I spent money, hired a team. Apart from my day job, I used to spend disproportionate amount of time guiding them. It was it was a very stretched period of time in my career, right? And then at that point of time, I also realized that the student is willing to spend 500 rupees and have momos, go for a cinema, or loiter around, but he's not willing to make that 500 rupees into an investment of about his career. And the reason which I found out was because when tier through tier 3 people, students, they generally think that the college will be responsible for giving them employment. So it is the college's responsibility to train them for the campus placements. So this was one of the insights that I got. But look at the sequence, right? As Bhabesh has pointed out, right? I started building, I started spending. Okay, this is what I'm saying. Started building, started spending, and even tried to launch. And certainly I was, hope was the conviction I was having. It was not validated. And when it came to the point where the rubber meets the road, that's when I realized a plate of momo is probably more valuable than what I was trying to offer to them through the platform. Is it the reality? Can I do something about it? Yes, I could have probably got some VC money and then created some ads, scared the shit out of their head that, okay, if you don't join this platform, you're not going to get jobs. All of that could have been done, but that's not the right way. And certainly the sequence was not right. Now cut to the second scene, right? When 2021, I was thinking of whether to start my coaching business or not. I was not rushing. In fact, every day I was thinking, contemplating, and then I would defer this decision. And around that time, my first book also came. It was called Work, Workmanship, and Winning, which was about how do you build a career, right? A career that is rewarding for you and fulfilling for you. And then, I wrote that book, understanding the core problem, that relationship that people have with their careers is not very well understood by most, and which is what I wanted to address through the book. So the book itself became the problem definition, and somewhere along the lines, there was enough to entice users to read it. And then suddenly one day I got a call from somebody in Australia who was one of my team members in KPMG. Now he called me up and then he said that, hey, Satyajit, I read your book. It's a fantastic book. I thought, oh, okay, fine, very nice, really lovely. And then he said, why don't you start a coaching business around it? Why don't you coach people? So I said that, who is going to pay for it? Who wants coaching? So he said, I want coaching. Then I said, will you pay? So he said, he paused for a moment. Then he says, can you check your bank account now? And he had actually transferred a token amount of money for me, just as a confirmation of a paying customer. So in one shot, you saw, right? It moved from problem to conversation to validation to payment. And that's when I understood that there is a huge potential in this, whatever I'm doing. And then I didn't really rush to build anything. I again had more conversations, like how Bhavesh mentioned, right? A conversation is worth more than the entire plan. So I started having more conversations with working professionals, and I had my journey, right? I started with something, then I pivoted to something else, then I moved to something else. And at this stage of my career, I am actually having a full-blown executive coaching program, which is what I'm offering for senior people. So the point I'm trying to make here is what Bhabesh said is an extremely practical way to go about it. Okay. And something that I have witnessed, I have lived along when I went through the journey. So it works, right? So there are many things we actually understood here. Interest is not validation, like how it was in the case of students. Real validation looks different, like that message, that payment message that my teammate had sent from Australia. And most early founders do confuse that. You saw that in my journey, and I have no shame in admitting, right? 2017 and 2021, they are two different Satyajits, the two different founders. The first one actually built, spent, and lost money and lost purpose. The second one is more profound, more grounded, understands what the problem is trying to solve, how can he solve, and then there is a validation to what he's trying to do. So there is this journey which I personally I have made, and I thought that probably it could just be a good point to share. Yeah, back to you, Bhavesh.
Thank you, Satyajit. Some really nice example from your own experience that adds more moat to my arguments. Thank you for bringing that. Kritika was asking, how long did it take you to build that visibility and see meaningful inbounds? That's a difficult question. For me, it took a little over a year to build visibility. Building visibility on social media and other platforms, right? Network platforms, it takes much longer than what we anticipate. It is a continuous and it's a consistent process. If you start, and it's like the way they say it in real estate, right? It's all about locations. And in the similar token, I would say, if you want to build visibility, time is now, right? So start now building your visibility now. There are lots of ways to build your visibility, right? And it is important. It's going to take a lot of time, but start brick by brick.
Yes.
And there are lots of ways. I think Satyajit is the best person because he has an excellent follower base on LinkedIn and YouTube. He has lots of followers on YouTube and LinkedIn. He knows the strategies and the tactics. Maybe you can talk about it.
Yeah, I think just one quick add here. It takes time, like you said, right? And it also takes consistencies, right? So just to give you some data points around that, last year, 2025, I have been very regular in LinkedIn. I wrote posts, I wrote articles, and you would be very, surprised to know that my writing streak was 345 days out of 365 days. I was that consistent. This year, I may not be, that consistent because I have now started filtering and I've started having a very different strategy. But consistency is something that you have to be. So consistency can be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Consistency could be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Consistency could be Tuesday, Saturday. The point is the routine and the rhythm. The point is not how many. I think that is a very important point I wanted to add on to what Bhavesh was saying. So shall I just move to the next slide? I think
yes. We're trying. We're behind the schedule. We'll try to wrap up as quickly as we can so that we can take questions at the end.
Absolutely. So I think I'm just going to go over very quickly, very, very important three-step action blueprint, right? Along with the tactical steps, right? You also need reframing. That is how we have grounded the session today. Now, what would be the first step, right? The first step is the sovereign shift that you need to make, which is more around your mindset, right? For example, you have to move from being directed to owning your narrative. What do I mean by this? What happens is when you are in a job, right? What happens is you are used to taking instructions. The day is pretty much planned. the week is pretty much planned. You know what needs to be done. And of course, there are ups and downs that happens that carries on. But essentially, when you head to the office, right, your day is planned. You know what needs to be done. But when you are planning something of your own, right, whether you are doing it with job, without job, the the play field is very open. You have to basically start owning the narrative. You have to come up with what activities you want to do on an everyday basis. And that could become very draining, which is why, again, having that mindset that, yes, I liked autonomy and that is why I'm here. So let me own it. Let me own the narrative and let me set directions for myself. This requires an entrepreneurial mindset. This is exactly what is the entrepreneurial mindset is about. To be able to dictate what work I want to do in that particular thread. So that's the first step that you need to take. The next step, which is step 2, lot of times, this is called the parallel architecture. Lot of times, your desire to be an entrepreneur stems from a resentment towards your current job. It could be a toxic boss, it could be a toxic environment, or whatever it is, right? And which is where it is important to understand the role. This webinar is about start without quitting. So very well, we are advocating that you continue and then you start parallelly exploring what needs to be done. Yeah. Which is why you need to have a very different view of your job now. Look at your job as your angel investor. This job is the very entity which is going to fund your runway. The side venture that you are planning is your innovation lab. So the parallel architecture is your current job is your angel investor, and your side hustle which you're planning, side venture which you're planning, which will eventually go full time later on, is your innovation lab. So fund your innovation lab with your angel money, angel fund, angel investors money. If you have that mindset, right, you will see your job's resentment actually vanishing, actually dissolving. And the last step which I want to talk about is this 90-minute micro contract that you want to do with yourself, okay? Which is basically start your journey now. Lot of things Bhavesh has told today in terms of operationalization, in terms of real hard-hitting practical steps, right? How do you start doing that? Make yourself a commitment, portion some time from your daily routine today and say that this is my time where I'm going to think. Just like eating, just like brushing your teeth, make it a habit that every day I'm going to spend 30 minutes, 1 hour, whatever time it takes, right, in this endeavor. And chances are that you will not make much progress initially. Let it be. Be kind to yourself, but understand that consistency, showing up each day, building brick by brick is what it takes. And the way we had structured today is the whole idea is not to quit, but to get started. Yeah. On that note, I'm going to go to the last slide of the session today. Bhavesh, would you just take it up? If you
Yes, Satyajit, I can take it up. So just this is a quick summary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So so as we wrap up, let me leave you with 5 simple ideas, right? First, you don't need to quit to start, okay? Because there is a myth about entrepreneurship, which is you need to walk away from your job on day 1, right? You don't, right? In fact, for most professionals, that's probably the wrong approach. Start small, learn, experiment, build confidence before you make any major decision. That's the first thing that I will tell you. The second one is your job. Your job, as Satyajit explained, is your angel investor. Your job is an asset, right? It's not a liability or an obstacle, right? Your salary funds your runway, right? Your experience gives you credibility, and your network gives you access. So your job is not holding you back. It can actually help you build something on the side. Okay. The third thing is, which I already discussed, right? Validate before you build, not the other way around. Don't build and then validate. That's the wrong sequence. Validate, then build. Don't start with a website or a logo or a product. Start with conversations, right? Understand the problem first, as deeply as you possibly can. Make sure people care enough about the problem to invest their time, attention, and money in solving it. Fourth is small, consistent action, beat big plans, right? Most people overestimate, right, that what they can do in a weekend, right? And they underestimate what they can do in a year. So start small, stay consistent, right? One conversation a week is fine. One LinkedIn post a week is fine to begin with, right? One customer meeting a week is good. So those small actions, right, they compound over time. And finally, start before you feel ready. The perfect time will never come. The reality is that nobody ever feels completely ready. There will always be uncertainty. There will always be reasons to wait. And there will always be reasons to postpone or defer. The people who eventually build something meaningful are usually not the people who had all the answers. You won't get all the answers when you start off, right? They are the people, right, who took the first step. Like the way they say, right? You learn to swim after you jump. Right? Jump and learn to swim. So if there is one message, right, we hope you take away from today's session, it is this. The goal is not to quit your job. The goal is to create enough options, enough confidence, and enough evidence that one day quitting becomes a choice, right? Not a necessity. So thank you for spending your time with us today.
Absolutely.
Let's open it up for questions. Yeah.
I think that is so profound. Yeah. So yes, we are open to questions now. In fact, any thoughts you can share? How did the session go? You can be open with feedback also.
Yeah. What could
So whether you liked it, whether what you didn't like also is fine.
Yeah.
It's all a very matured audience, so it's perfectly fine. In fact, our yes, Karthikeyan, I think you have raised your hand. You have a question. Yes.
Yes. Actually, this is a very good session, and it's an eye-opening session for us. And even see exactly, it's a what I feel is like this is the right time, because even these days I was thinking like how I can make something out of work, and how in sideline how I can start something new. So it's a right app time where I got a clear understanding of from your presentation. It's a very helpful session for me. And one thing I have one question is like see, since India kind of country, we have a lot of regulations in terms of uh, starting something new, or any company which we are starting, apart from the job, like currently what we are doing. So how we can tackle, or how we can overcome with being in the current organization, to start something new sideline without quitting. So I want to understand how we can. Is there any legality involved, or any suggestions from your side? Any advice?
So I think one of the things that you need to probably look at is your contract, the employment contract. Okay, so you need to understand whether what you are doing will qualify becoming a moonlighting.
Okay.
It's like you should not get into those territories. Okay, some companies are giving it a green signal that they're okay with moonlighting, but some are not. But by and large, right? If your areas do not conflict with what your organization is primarily doing, right? So, for example, when I was in Reliance, I was in Geo, so it was a telecom company. But the kind of initiative that I was trying to run in parallel was more around career guidance coaching. So there is no real conflict of interest in the two. Okay, but it is very important to look at your contract, your employment code of conduct, so on and so forth, and see, you're not treading in that zone where it gets into a moonlight kind of a model. And of course,
Okay.
from a legal perspective, when you run something, you can separately, call it a different entity. So a lot of people do that in the name of their wife or in the name of their parents. They try to create that legal entity and, have their whatever operations run under that. So those are again legal aspects. But as you
Okay.
will progress, right, you will need the services of a chartered accountant, at some point of time, maybe corporate startup lawyer who focuses on that. But those are going to come at a later time. Then they're not
Okay.
immediate concern.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your clarification, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you for your nice feedback also, and a
Yeah.
brilliant question. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thomas, you were typing in something. I could get Thomas's point here. I think building a website that describes the services that I can offer before conversations will help me in my initial discussions. This is what Thomas Anthony has typed in. Satyajit, you want to help
Yeah.
expand this?
See, it also depends on what kind of service you are offering. So for you, right, I think you mentioned about becoming a consultant at a later stage, right? I think you were talking about offering that service. Yes, in that case, building a website will help because you are going to be a one-person consultant for some time to start with, at least. I really don't see that you're going to put up a team to start with. So you're going to start as a solopreneur or a individual consultant who is doing consulting work with other companies. So yes, in that case, putting up a website is very, very important. But you also have to understand one more aspect of it. This website should not become a static website. It has to be continuously updated with whatever you are doing. So for example, if you look at my website, right, I have basically tracked all my journey from the very beginning of my career, right, from my entrepreneurial journey. Everywhere I have visited, I have basically taken snaps. I have chronicled that in my website. So similarly, you have done that, and you have to do that. And also, at various points in time, I have also pivoted in terms of my services. So your website, if you're making, right, please ensure that it is reflecting your current truth. It's not something which is like updated a year back, or it is not maintained well, because then it will do more damage than building any credibility. I think definitely you can share that as a. So I do share my website when I'm. In fact, we didn't take off. We didn't show that slide to you. We had a slide where both of us had our websites. Bhabesh had his website written there. I had my website written there. So yes, it's a credibility builder, especially when you are into a business which is driven by your intellect value, like consulting and all. It really helps. Yes.
Yes.
Any more questions?
Any more questions, Falgun? You have anything to ask? Shashwat, Ashish?
Sorry. The good part is you've done a very practical, kind of things, putting in a certain point, which are very, very practical. Not many people are, kind of paying attention to that. So I think that would be really helpful to the people who are already in this chat and webinar. So yeah, but it takes still a long part. Right? It does not look as simple as putting in a presentation and everything.
Yeah.
People need to have a big thing is patience, confidence.
Mhm.
These two things are absolutely important, and of course the support from the family. Without them, nobody
Yeah.
would be able to do anything out of it. And most of the time, they are also kind of limited by this factor as well. So good, great job, you guys are putting. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Falgun, for your
I think
encouraging words.
thank you. That was very encouraging. But I also want to put a question back to the group, actually, if I may, right? So,
Please.
I see, to be very honest, I see a lot of information around building startups and all that, right? But given that you mentioned that what we put together was very practical, right? More tactical, and also it had a pillar which talked about how do you reframe, realign, things like that. What do you think? Would people be interested if we, develop this further? into a program? Does it make sense? Do you think people will find it beneficial? I would love to hear thoughts from all of you.
Yeah, so I think I would maybe give you a couple of this thing. This thing can surely develop, and I think if you people really formulate in a way which could help a lot of people. The only thing is that still need to have that what I would say branding and market kind of visibility.
Hmm.
Second thing is maybe the duration. So things has to be short. Nowadays, we are in the living in the age of internet. People are scrolling immediately, hardly any few seconds, and then interest goes to the next big thing. So yes, LinkedIn is a very good platform you people have been doing, but you can formulate these things, and I would say, yeah, sure, things would be good.
Mm-hmm. I think Bhavesh had to, he got basically pushed out because there was a power cut. He'll join in a way. But I think that is what we are trying. We're trying to bring something which is more practical for working professionals, right? We are a very different breed. I was actually looking at the statistics, right? While more people in the early stage start, but theoretically, but practically speaking, people who are more than 40 years, they have a 2.1%, 2.1 times more chances of succeeding in their ventures. So experience clearly is useful. I think some of the barriers that we need to probably overcome is, as I mentioned, one of the barrier where we are used to taking instructions as working professionals. We measure ours in something that I also have gone through, right? So I used to feel that if I'm not sitting in front of my desktop, then I'm not working. But my work is very creative, right? So I had to take that jump in terms of my mindset, right? I was still somewhere, fighting the ghosts of my corporate career, where number of hours equal to productivity or how much I have done in the day. So it took me a while to condition myself very differently. So these are all, in fact, what we didn't speak, Bhavesh, welcome back.
Thank you.
What we
Sorry
what
about the
we
power outage.
what we didn't speak about is the mindset which we need, once we start or get into that. That is where I wanted to, take your views. Would something more practical, course oriented, can help people, make that cut? Because I see a lot of people having potential. You won't believe there are so many friends of mine who are working. They will always say, let's do something together. But then eventually it doesn't go anywhere because, there is this inertia, which we talked about, this mindset reframing. A lot of it is really there, which is actually what prompted us to do this session.
Yeah, sure.
So,
I mean, I fully agree with you. This is also the biggest barrier. I would say 95% is in the mind. That is why
mm,
people don't take the next step,
Yes.
and it will
absolutely,
happen. A lot of
Yes.
absolutely.
uncertainties, right? And
Yes.
in today's world, when nothing is certain, tomorrow you never know what Mr. Trump will do, or Mr. Modi will, announce something, bhai or bano. So everybody is having these kind of issues. So
Mm,
it's really hard, for unless you have a very good planning, out of it. And that's where I think if you people can guide, by putting a framework together, as you rightly said, let them come to you, have a conversation with you. You can try to frame out the things for them. That'd be great.
right, right. So there is Thomas who has put an observation in the chat. He says that I have seen some people offering workshops for doing consultancy without quitting the job. Yes, I think there is a lot of these kinds of workshops, webinars, right? So in fact, when we were thinking of putting a webinar, we also went through the same question that is it just another webinar, like a Me Too kind of thing. So yes, there are many people who are trying to share something or the other. See, the question now is no more about availability, and the question is now about fitment. So, you might find working with X to be better than working with Y. So that differentiation, that judgment is something you have to build. So yes, there are many people who are offering this services. I think if you want, you should try out speaking to them, how they can help, and take it forward from there.
Yeah. In fact, adding on to what Satyajit said, right? I mean, I do, advise a lot of startups as part of incubators and accelerators in Bangalore. When I started off ad hoc, ad hoc session, like an hour-long session, thinking through the problem statement or refining the their solution framework or value propositions or things like product market fit and thing. But when I approached to them and said, like, ad hoc sessions are useful, but moreover, if we do a structured way of working with a bunch of founders with a similar idea, with a similar line of business, and then if I offer my services, I typically work in the go-to-market strategy space, and I said, like, why not I do a 4-week go-to-market strategy sprint covering all the fundamentals, nuances, and with examples, and taking examples from what the kind of problem they are experiencing and what kind of solutions they are building, what is going right, what is not going so right. And then in the 4-week time that I spent with many of these founders, a lot of things did come out. And I gave them the milestones, I gave them the guidelines, I asked them to think through the activities, the progress, the traction. I gave them the the homework to do before we meet in subsequent sessions, right? So that kind of helped them to gain momentum. Things were a bit stalled when we started out, but I could see within that 4 weeks with a structured program in place, people, the founders started to driving value from my engagement. So ad hoc sessions are useful, but if you package it in a way with a more fundamental and conceptual understanding, but also with examples from the real world, right, as to how it applies and plays out for their own businesses, that can be helpful. But I don't know from this group, what you guys think. Is there a way that we can build something, a structured module that wherein most people, the aspiring entrepreneurs, will find value? What are your key thoughts there? Do you think anything of that sort would help you to take that action? What is stopping you from, in the event that program comes out to be more meaningful and more thought-provoking?
Sorry, guys, I have to jump back.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phalgun.
Thank you. I think let's also wrap this up, unless you have more questions. Yeah, I mean, feel free to drop off. And I wanted to thank all of you for making time on a Saturday and listening to us. It was a fabulous audience, very interactive, and do let us know. I personally know some of you, so it's fine. But yes, I mean, feel free to reach out to us. Both of us are on LinkedIn, so reach out to us, and we will happy to provide
Yes.
more information. Yeah. So I think
yes.
on that note,
Thomas
shall we
has
just
written something. He
okay.
says, I think there will be a lot of interest to what you and I propose.
Oh, okay, great. I think then what we have for ourselves, Bhavesh, is we'll put up something and then have more conversations, right? We have to do the problem validation. We validate, and then we take it from there. Great, fantastic. Thank you so much. And I think Thomas is writing something again.
Thomas, you can speak up.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Kritika. Also,
there you
thank you, Bhabesh. Thank you, Satyajit. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll end the meeting then. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for attending on a Saturday.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah, yeah. Fine, fine. Thank
great to have you all. Take care.
Bye. Bye.